Welcome to Nebraska.
Nebraska. I never thought I'd be put smack dab in the middle of the country. My company sent me to the capital city of Lincoln for the next month and a half for work, just weeks after the historic floodings hit the surrounding areas along the Missouri River. The day I arrived after settling in at my hotel, I went out exploring for a bit to see what I could find. I discovered the BNSF Creston Subdivision, which is the main line connecting to Creston, Iowa, going through Omaha, and eventually to Lincoln. I found a crossing on the east side of the city as a loaded coal train heads east, passing 98th Street. A majority of the train traffic that runs up here on the BNSF are coal trains. The Powder River Basin in Wyoming is just to the west, which is one of the main locations that these trains come from. Lincoln is basically the split point for these coal trains, as they go in many directions. Some will continue east towards Iowa, and others will go towards Kansas City. I was fixing to move locations when another eastbound snuck up on me. It was a mixed manifest freight train following not far behind the coal train that we just saw. Moving to the east, I come into the small community of Greenwood, where a huge grain elevator is split by the tracks. there's a good handful of grain elevators all across the state of Nebraska, being there's plenty of farmland out here. Speaking of grain, a westbound empty grain train would be my next catch, with one lucky surprise. BNSF SD70 ACE 8438 leads ex-Santa Fe War Bonnet 640 as they speed through the small community. This was a nice way to welcome myself in the state of Nebraska. That the light was fading away, I decided to chase this train back towards Lincoln. US Highway 6 follows the Creston Subdivision all the way to downtown, so it was going to be pretty easy catching up to them. As I was coming through Waverly, you can see them passing by a tied-down tanker car train, which I would assume would be ethanol, with a Canadian Pacific AC-44CW on one end and a BNSF Executive SD70 Mac on the other. I eventually caught up to the head end and paced them by a few grade crossings with horn action before getting close to a no-horn ordinance the rest of the way into the city. Listen closely as the engines notch up to speed. one last good pace in before calling it a night after my travel day getting here. Work was gonna start for me early the next morning. If you'd like to see my trip report to Lincoln, check the link in the description. This was a nice little surprise, as I was waiting to assist a crew on a train in Hastings. Before they could do anything though, they had to wait on mainline traffic to clear, and that wasn't going to be anytime soon. This H train was the only train that I got on video with 11 engines in the consist. After another day at work, I spotted a Z train heading east through Lincoln. I went for 98th Street to hopefully get them at speed, but even after getting out of town, they weren't going that fast. This train runs from Denver, Colorado to the Corwith Intermodal facility in Chicago, carrying Intermodal, UPS, and FedEx, to name a few. This and its westbound counterpart are the only high-priority trains that run through Nebraska on BNSF, with the exception of Amtrak, of course. This crossing was pretty unique to me, located just outside of downtown Lincoln. This is technically a quiet zone, but you can see speakers set up sounding off an automated horn loud enough for travelers to hear at the crossing. But trains only sound their bell while going across like a normal quiet zone crossing. I've always wanted to see one of these in person. Glad to say I can check this off my bucket list, as we also see a westbound empty coal train passing through in the late morning hours. Later that evening, I ventured out west of Lincoln with the last remaining sunlight shining on the tracks as an eastbound loaded grain train approaches CP 244 on the Ravenna subdivision. A nice little surprise was added in with HLCX leaser GP 38-2 3881 in the consist. This was a quick catch while strolling around as an H train enters Hobson Yard, with a BNSF H2-944CW leading another -9 in the Warbonnet paint scheme, and an SD75I as well. I've never had eyes on a BNSF SD75I before until this very day. There's another one to check off the list. The next morning, I stumbled upon the westbound Z train running from Chicago to Denver. The quick catch was made at the 35th and Adams grade crossing, as I just finished up breakfast at a local cafe. Later that afternoon, while on a trip at work, I see a westbound H train approaching the small community of Tamora along the BNSF Ravenna subdivision. What caught my eye was something I've never seen before. It had 2 Boeing plane bodies, as well as 2 cars with parts for the planes. The power up front even had a Norfolk Southern -944CW in trail. This train basically explains why I like to call the Ravenna line the Super Coal Speedway. Being this one was empty, the max track speed for these trains is 60 miles an hour, while the loaded coal trains can go up to 55 miles an hour. These empty trains, though, will fly, as BNSF 6119 leads this westbound through Aurora, Nebraska. Here's another fast empty coal train going at max speed, passing through the town of Cairo. had a little bit of free time and found this spot on the east side of Hobson Yard in Lincoln. CP Carling is the start of the St. Joseph Subdivision, connecting to St. Joseph and Kansas City, Missouri. BNSF 8442 is seen pulling this westbound empty coal train towards the yard for a crew swap, before continuing west onto the Ravenna line. As BNSF 8442 slowly comes to a crawl, it meets BNSF 4094 as it's seen leading an eastbound empty grain train onto the St. Joseph Subdivision. Just after getting off work, Amtrak's westbound California Zephyr Train 5 was fixing to depart Lincoln. Being I've never shot this Amtrak train before, I go for the town of Denton, a small community just outside of the city. Back in the open fields of the Ravenna line, I spent the last bit of daylight catching a few trains. This first one, located just outside of Seward, is an eastbound loaded grain train led by BNSF 6546. I came back out here mainly to look at the local grain elevator power at Tamora. Ex-Conrail GP9 High Hood 1096, along with ex-Chesapeake and Ohio 7309, an old SD18, guards the elevator in the quiet community. This is a nice gem to see, especially out here in the Midwest. The old Conrail blue caught my eye when I first saw it, thinking to myself, why on earth is this out here along a BNSF mainline? As time passes with the light quickly fading away and the chilling wind picking up, BNSF 9206 East passes the grain elevator at Tamora with a loaded coal train.
detector. Milepost 34.0. Main 2, no defects. Repeat, no defects. Total axle 554. Temperature 72 degrees out.
Before calling it a night, one more train showed up in the picture. BNSF 9148 West leads an empty coal train over CP 333 in the distance as it speeds past a windmill through the cornfields. BNSF 7500 is seen leading the morning run of the westbound ZCHIDEN 9 through Pacific Junction, Iowa. Just weeks prior to this date, Pacific Junction was completely underwater caused by the historic flooding from the Missouri River. Portions of Interstate 29 was closed due to road damage, and many other places were shut down with high water still over the roadways. Once the water died down a little ways weeks later, only work crews were allowed in this area at the time. I was given a special assignment at work to assist a work train all day in Pacific Junction. The work train crews were dumping ballast along the tracks as a part of BNSF's huge restoration project to the Napier Subdivision. This line was badly hit by the floods and shut down the entire line, which caused trains to be rerouted out of Kansas City. This is by far some of the worst flooding I've seen in my lifetime, and my hearts go out to those who lost their homes in this natural disaster. As I sit around watching crews continue to dump ballast, I was able to snag a few trains passing by along the Creston subdivision. There wasn't a whole lot of action running around, but it kept me busy for a little while. That's gonna do it for this video. This last train was cut short, cause I had to get back to work. Stay tuned for more videos from my trip to Nebraska. Please be sure to give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. Also hit that notification bell down below for all new updates on my content. And if you are new to me, please subscribe. I'd love to have you come along with me on my next adventure. Until next time, so long from Pacific Junction, Iowa, along the BNSF Creston Subdivision.